So where? If you don't know where Ridgetown campus is, way down here, about halfway between London and Windsor. That's where the satellite campus is. It's a small campus, 500 students in total. We have primarily agricultural education there, although I teach mostly in the Environment Diploma program. I do teach this one course in the sales course in the Ag Diploma. And it's the idea of this course, and I'll get into why I took it this route, was that we have a small town, and I like to take my students into the town. And I like to actually get the town to be part of the whole teaching experience for them. And so it's pleasant. This is the main street of Ridgetown, and in fact that's practically all of Ridgetown for those who haven't been there before. There's only 3,500 people, so it's a very pleasant place to live if you like rural lifestyle. As I said, first year Ag Diploma is who my students are, and a sales and sales management course. Why sales and sales management? Well, for 20 years I was in the world of sales. One way or another, I worked for a big insurance company, I worked for myself, had my own restaurant supply industry business, and I did a lot of things in sales before I went back to school. And so when I got through university, got into a teaching opportunity, and they gave me a list of courses and said, which one would you like to teach? Well, I can do that one, I can do that one. And so sales was one of those courses. Why did I take this approach to selling? Well, when I started the course, my predecessor said, if you're going to have more than 15 students in this course, it's unworkable. Because the students actually have to come and do a sales presentation. And if you've got 30 students and they each take 15, 20 minutes to do a sales presentation to the class, you're going to spend weeks doing that and nothing else. So I had to think about a different way to do it. And so my first year with 48 students, all of a sudden I was way beyond that 15 magic number. And that was actually the smallest class I've ever had. I've had as many as 70 in this course. So I had to come up with an approach that was going to take some of that workload off of me, give me some more opportunities in the class to get my message across rather than me listening to sales presentations. So I set the course up in basically 4 components. And those 4 components are the lectures. We all, as teachers, how many people here are professors, instructors, teachers? Most of us, okay, almost all. So you know we have to lecture, that's what we do. Well, I've taken the approach to lecturing that I'm here to relate, make it relevant to the students. So relate my real world experiences and show them how the textbook relates to the real world. And so a lot of my lectures are anecdotal stories about, we're talking about how to go out and prospect for new customers. Well, I tell them some of the things that happen when you're trying to prospect. I tell them what some of the challenges are, how it can be made to be a lot of fun, and all the rest of the stuff. So I get them engaged in thinking about not just what the textbook says, but what really happens in the real world. A big part of my lectures, though, is guest speakers. And I bring in real salespeople, people who do it for a living. And they talk, I just open the floor and say, talk about a day in the life. And so that's what they do. The big part of the course is the sales presentation. And this is where they go out and do a sales presentation in the real world. And from my perspective, it was, how am I going to thin down the crowd? I know, I'll make them do something, a presentation in the real world, they'll all drop the course and I'll only have 15 again. It didn't work, because the other elective is a weed science course and weed chemistry, or pesticide chemistry, and so they get these great big terms in the first week of classes, so the ones I lose go there, and the ones he loses come into my class, so it balances out in the end. And then the very last thing I do is a sales analysis, which was an opportunity for the students to look at a real salesperson in action and then assess their ability. And so I'll talk briefly about that as well. So lectures, this is the textbook I use. ABCs, and this is the key, in my opinion, relationship selling. I stumbled across this book and it just fit my theory of sales really well, and so through service. And my lectures are a basis of a set of PowerPoints that are based on the textbook. They came with the text. I just tweaked them to fit my own style and use that. Every week I cover 2 or 3 chapters out of the text, and we go through the key issues. So there's just an example of some of the topics. Prospecting, planning, the approach, the presentation itself, how to handle objections, closing the sale, follow-up. All these are things that anybody in sales has to do on a regular basis, whether they've had formal training or not. They're actually required to go through these steps if they want to be successful. And so that's what we talk about in the lectures, but as we all know, most students sit there and they listen, but they don't hear. And that's the challenge of being a lecturer, is you have to find a way to make them hear what you're actually saying. So my guest speakers help me to do that. And what I do is, starting in week 2, and for the next 7 weeks, 1 lecture period every week is a guest speaker. And since we only have 3 lectures per week, that's a fairly big chunk of my course. And these are professional salespeople. And there's just a sampling of the industry. Keep in mind it's an ag diploma for the most part, although I do have some horticulture students in there as well. But I get an implement dealer, a feed dealer, an ag web services provider, precision ag equipment dealer come in, and they talk about how they go through the day. What are the key things that they come across when they're selling? What do they think makes them successful when they're in the sales field? And so this is the kind of things. But I also get a flower shop, used car dealership, those types of things, types of people come in and talk. What's the end result? Selling is selling, no matter what field you're in. And this was purely coincidence at the end of the semester when I stopped and assessed what had come out of all of these first group of salespeople that came in. This truth came out, and the students picked up on it, which to me was really exciting. That they listened to all these people, they listened to me, and they realized it doesn't matter what field I'm selling in, the same things hold true. Well, one of the challenges, how many people have used guest speakers in their class? Any challenge with getting the students to really engage with a guest speaker? Or, yeah, sometimes. So what I found is a little strategy that works well. I give them a handout, and it just has 1, 2, and 3. And I ask them to write 3 potential exam questions with answers and hand it in at the end of the class. If I use your question, then you'll get a bonus mark. And so everybody practically does this. There's very few people that don't want it shot at. So what are they doing? They're listening all the way through the talk, picking up ideas. What did this person say? And after the first one, I give feedback about what types of questions really struck me as good questions, which types of questions weren't so good, and it evolves. Then as the time goes on, the questions get better and better. And so what I do in the midterm is I give 2 questions from every guest speaker as part of the exam. On the final exam, it's usually just 1 question from each speaker. So a great tool to get your students engaged. Then we get to the sales presentation. The real meat of my course and real community involvement beyond just the guest speakers. First part of it is arranging businesses to sell to. So you can imagine that if you've got 70 students, you've got to find 70 spots in your community for them to go out to, because nobody in their right mind is going to say, sure, come and talk to me, student. I have no idea what you're talking about, but come and talk to me. So as the instructor, I have to prepare them in advance. And it's a lot easier than you might think. They have to do a written presentation, and they have to actually do their sales presentation. So how do I solicit the business? Easy. I find a nice sunny day, I walk downtown, walk into the stores, set my business card down. If they don't know me, they think, oh no, not another salesman. But I just have a chat. Here's what I'm doing. Would you be interested in participating? Would you take one of my students or 2 of my students and allow them to come and do a 10 to 15 minute sales presentation to you? Well, what do I have to do? Just treat them like you would any other salesperson. That's what I said at first until somebody said, "You want me to be that mean?" No, maybe not quite that mean, but sure. Just treat them as if it's a real sales presentation from their perspective, keeping in mind that, in fact, they are students. So I explained that process to them. Whoa. This is the other thing that really helps to make the sale for me. As I tell them, they have to call you 1 week in advance. You're not going to have any drop-ins. You're going to have time to prepare. You're going to know they're coming. And so they'll set up an appointment to come and see you. So I prepare the students and I emphasize, you have to do this. They have a 2-week window at the end of the semester to get the sales presentation done. And so they can do that. Then, the hard part for the person in the business is they have to actually score the student. So what do? I give them a sheet and it just gives them 1 to 5. Did they have a good handshake? Did they make good eye contact? Were they dressed appropriately? Did they know about your business? Did they know about their product, their service they're trying to sell? Did they know about the competition? So ranking 1 to 5 and give some kind of a comment if you feel it's appropriate. So it makes it really easy for them as they're sitting there. They can do a check off as it goes down. And it's amazing how many of these business owners and managers really get into this. The comments I get back, they really enjoy doing what they're doing and helping the students out. So this is the form that they get. Fairly straightforward, ranking of 1 to 5. Down near the bottom I have my fudge factor question, and this is, would you hire this person for a sales position based on their presentation today? Why or why not? And so I call it my fudge factor because I can take these scores and give the student a score. But I read between the lines of those numbers because you might say 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, and exactly the same presentation might only get a 3, a 5, a 2, and a 5 out of you. And so I've got to have a way, based on the comments, of adjusting for those kinds of scores. And so I get an extra mark in here. These numbers just drop into a spreadsheet, and that gives me an overall mark for that component of it. And then at the very bottom, I have a signature on here so that I know the student didn't actually fill these numbers in. And it comes back in a sealed envelope from the person. So over the last 8 years of teaching this course, I only had 1 business refuse. Cool part of that, from my perspective, they were out of business within 2 years. So obviously not community-minded enterprise. In those 8 years, I had 1 business stop doing it, and after 5 years, he just says, "No, can't do it anymore." Well, I wonder if had the fact that I no longer take my car to him, I take it to one of the other guys. That's kind of what I think. Scratch my back, scratch yours, and I quit scratching. All the other businesses that I've approached say, undoubtedly, yeah, coming back and do it again, they love it. The feedback I get from them, they'll stop me in the street, I'll go into their store to buy something. "Oh, you know, that student came in the other day and they said this and they did this," and they pour all kinds of feedback on me. "This is what you should be telling them." Yeah, I gotta remember who all these students are at each individual business, but it's great feedback. So I realize that these business owners love what they're doing. There's just an example of the kinds of businesses that have taken up. Dentists, drugstore owner, flower shop, auto mechanics, used car dealer, jewelry store, real estate, lumber yard, you name it, right across the board. It doesn't really matter. This year, for this first time, I had, even up here, ladies' fashions. That was kind of an interesting one because, I'll get to that in a second. Written presentation is a series of questions that come in the back of each chapter of the textbook. So I put it all together in a single document. What it does is it allows the students to go through and build their sales presentation. So the very first question on them is, State the product you plan to sell. So they need to know first who they're going to sell to. Now a lot of students, when they do pick out, they say, well, what am I going to sell? So I tell them, what do you know about it? You're going to a lumber yard. What is it that a lumber yard might need? It doesn't have to be a product, it could be a service. You want to do grass mowing, you want to do window washing, you want to sell them some new furniture, some equipment. It really doesn't matter. It's up to you as the student to pick what you want to sell to this business, something they could use. So how do they pick their business? This is where course length comes in. I used to have a big sign-up sheet on my page, but degree students aren't as bad, but diploma students, they like to see it. Oh, he's there, scratch it off, put him down here. And these kinds of things happen on a regular basis. So the student who had it down here, he'd scratch it off and he'd put it back up here, and the thing became a mess. Once course link was available to set it up on, I go in and I set up, I've got 45 students, I set up 45 groups. Simple as that. And they all will accept one student only, first come, first served basis. I give them a deadline. You have to be signed up by such and such a date. If you're not, you'll get signed up by me. So I really look forward to the opportunity of signing up that big farm boy with his muddy boots and his hat on backwards to the ladies' fashions. Or the jewelry store or something else. And so they sign up pretty quick because I warn them that's an option. Sales presentation, they book a week before, they've got a 2-week window to complete it. They take 10 to 15 minutes to sell their product or service, and they return the marking sheet. Sounds really easy. But remember, these are students, most of whom have never sold a thing. Some of them might have worked at McDonald's or Timmy's, but they've really never sold. And so now they have to go out and do a sales presentation and sell themselves to the real world. And it can be pretty intimidating. One of the things I have found is that the ones who are scared to death at the beginning come back to me afterwards and say, that was an awesome experience. Because when they come and hand me that report, I ask everyone, how'd it go? It was great. It was really good. And that's, I think in 8 years, I've had one who came back still shaking and saying, that was horrible. But everybody else really likes it. Whoops. What did I have there? Back one. Yeah, the sales assessment. Very last piece of the course. I bring in guest speakers through the semester, and they talk about their life. But I'm fortunate that I found a guy that he says, he comes in, and he does a sales pitch to the entire class. He sells motor oil additives and grease and things like that. He's used to talking to large groups of farmers, groups of truck drivers, and so on to sell his product. So the last week, he comes in, does a sales presentation. Students get a 6-page set of questions, and the questions ask them all the things about selling. Well, was he dressed appropriately? Did he make good eye contact? Was he ethical in his methods? Did he know his product? Did he know the competition? Did he use a trial close? All of these questions. So now, they've listened to me talk about what all the key things are. Then they've gone in and talked to a real business. They've done it. So they've got some experience. They know what it's like. Now they have an opportunity, again, with a real-world situation, to listen to a sales presentation and assess it. How well did this person do? And give me reasons why they give their answers. And so the students have now run from being the absolute learner to the one who's critiquing in the end in this one semester. And that goes over quite well. This guy is a dream come true, because this year, after 8 years, we were talking about it, and I told him that he's the capstone, and he says, I guess I'll be coming back for a while then, won't I? So he's been really good for the course. Challenges of community involvement, coordinating guest lectures. It's one of the things I run into is there's farm shows. I try to bring in ag-related speakers if I can, so there's certain times a year when There's the London Farm Show is on, the Toronto Farm Show is on, and it's really difficult to get appropriate speakers. I can't book till I've got a timetable myself to know when my classes are. I juggle with farm shows. There's only so many U of G coffee mugs I can give out as gifts at the end. So, and that's getting tougher and tougher to get appropriate gifts. In town, I try not to wear out my welcome, although that doesn't seem to be a problem. They keep saying, yeah, come on back, it's been great. I started sending out thank you cards. One of the other challenges is how do I split up the marks for this sales presentation? Because one of the things that I have to do is decide where the weighting goes. We've got 15% for the written component. This is a lot of work, but if I give more than 15%, is it fair because the people marking it may not be giving the same kinds of marks? So I've got to bring it down but keep it high enough so that it's worth the students doing it. Benefits, real world experience, it's really applied learning for these students. They're out there getting out of their comfort zones. They're forced to think on their feet because these businesses ask them questions as they would a real salesperson. It enhances self-esteem. A number of students that say, you know, I can't do this, to that was fun. Businesses like to participate, and they see them for more than Thursday night antics after pub night, right? So now they're seeing a different side of our students, which has been really great, and I've had that feedback as well from those businesses. Very quickly, because I see I'm running out of time, some of the student feedback, these are from signed course evaluations. Just for example, putting together and executing a sales presentation was a great practical exercise to get ready for the real thing. Specifically bringing in guest lectures was great. I may well choose a career in sales. This past year, had a terrible idea about who salespeople are and what they wanted. Rick's class totally changed my mind about the entire sales society. It almost makes me want to do sales as a career. Didn't have to put almost in. From that fudge factor question, would you hire? This year alone, I had a page and a half of responses from the businesses, and with the exception of one, they were all positive. Things like good research, good idea, would hire her in a heartbeat. Simon's done with a lot of thought and professionalism. I hired her most definitely. So really positive feedback from the businesses, and just made me feel really good about my students. Training in the interesting concepts and intriguing ideas for our business, some of which have been implemented or are being considered. One of the other nice bonuses this year, I actually had a student get offered a job in sales with one of the companies they went to see. So making it real, connecting the community, it's great for the students. I think it really stretches them. It gives them an opportunity to make those connections in the real world. It's great for the businesses. They like to play teacher, it seems. And it's great for me as the instructor because that 2 weeks, or what, 3 weeks it might have taken with a really large class to do sales presentation, now is a time that I can cover other material. And I've been able to actually introduce a section on networking and doing other things like that into the course that weren't part of it before, because I now have this extra time that I can fill. So are there any questions from you?